never preached about orphans before. Here I get to preach a sermon about orphans. Matsiko. Do you know what Matsiko means? You do if you looked at the website. Matsiko is a Ugandan word, correct me here, is a Ugandan word that means hope. And when you see these kids, some of you have been around these kids, and by the way, they like to hug, so look out. But when you're around these kids, you see that they are full of hope. So what a great name. So I think today is a great transition. We had a couple of missions Sundays. We had Tim Robnett and Clark and Yvonne Malone. Tim travels all around the world training evangelists. And the Malones are in Portugal, where they speak Portuguese. How about that? See, I'm learning. So they were here, and we enjoyed them quite a bit. And Betty Stark, a missionary mom, is back there. The Huffs are with Crew at a university. Where are they now? They're still in Pennsylvania? Yeah, good. So thank you for being here. So we've had a couple of mission Sundays. I thought this is a great transition from missions to our mission. And so what we know is that we need to be strong in here so that we can be strong out there. And so this morning I want to ask the question, what is in the heart of God? Now we're not going to be able to answer all of that, but what is in the heart of God? And I remembered this verse. This is an awesome passage from the book of Proverbs, written by Solomon. And I think we might have to look at this in more depth in the near future. But this says, the Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel, purpose of the book, to know wisdom and instruction, to discern the sayings of understanding, to receive instruction in wise behavior, righteousness, justice, and I want us to kind of key in on this word, equity. To give prudence to the naive, to the youth, knowledge and discretion. A wise man will hear and increase in learning, will be taught, will be teachable, and a man of understanding will acquire wise counsel. And that verse is telling us that you can't really become wise all on your own. You can't really become wise by yourself. It really is a group effort. But check this out as a purpose for the book of Proverbs. To understand a proverb and a figure, the words of the wise and their riddles. If we have to be teachable and learn from others to be wise, when we first start out, one of the things we have to do is to learn to even understand the language and teaching of the wise. But here's a great verse. The fear of Yahweh is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. The fear of Yahweh is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. As it turns out, and you could look later, and I'm hoping we get back to this verse, Jesus is actually the embodiment of wisdom. Isn't that amazing? So, what is in the heart of God? Well, I want to say this morning that we should follow the heart of God toward the needy. What is the heart of God toward the needy? And whatever that is, we should follow the heart of God. If you look at where the Bible talks about orphans, and it does in many places, one of the most important verses in the New Testament is James. And this verse says that pure and undefiled religion in the sight of our God and Father is this: to visit, to show up, but for the purpose of helping, providing. And so this reminds me a lot of the incarnation. You know, when Jesus came to earth, when God became man, we say that divine love is incarnational. I'm sorry, that's a big word, but what does that mean? That means that it's intimate, up close, and personal. God didn't love us from a distance only. God became a man and loved us in the most intimate, up close, and personal kind of way. I think that's what this verse is talking about. Not just to love from a distance, but to visit for the purpose of helping and providing, to visit orphans and widows in their distress. And there's something about these two categories, orphans and widows. Number one, if you're an orphan or a widow, you're likely to be needy. And number two, if you're an orphan or a widow, you didn't become that because of anything that you did. So you're utterly faultless and yet likely to become needy. So James says, pure and undefiled religion in the sight of our God and Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their distress. That's one thing. And secondly, to keep oneself unstained by the world. Excuse me. So I think religion gets a bad rap these days. And I've said this, I don't know, 1,000,000 times, and maybe you've heard it. Christianity is not a religion, it's a relationship. And there's truth in that. But the fact is, Christianity is not just a religion, it's at its heart a relationship. Christianity is first a relationship. But if that relationship doesn't lead to acting out what a religion might do, then that relationship isn't what it ought to be. And James uses that term here, religion. And he says, in the sight of our God, and in the sight of our God, the religion could either be Judaism or Christianity. So any religion that comes with the approval of the true God, what James is saying, that the least that religion should do, the least a godly person should do, is empathize with a person suffering without fault. That is, connect with people. Of course, that's where we want to concentrate today. So, if you can't empathize with a person in need that is not at fault in their need, then what kind of religion do you really have? The second thing he says is at least a godly person, the least a godly person should do is follow basic morality. So connect with people, especially people in need, but disconnect from the world. And I'm impressed how much the New Testament uses the phrase the world to define that which is other than Christianity. So, what is in the heart of God? The first time the word orphan is used in the Bible is in Exodus chapter 22. I want to encourage you to read the context of this later on. But Exodus says, and I want to show you this because we see in the New Testament, but it's also an Old Testament concept, tells you that this is really ingrained in the heart of God. He says, do not mistreat or oppress a foreigner, for you were foreigners in Egypt. God is calling them to be empathetic. Do not take advantage of the widow or the fatherless. Look, those same two categories right there in the book of Exodus. So, again, God expects people to empathize with others who are in need. Other passages require God's people to help. Here, it is emphatically required that they do not hurt. So you can look at other passages in the Old Testament, and God is requiring His people to help widows and orphans. If you go down in the context of the next chapter, and hopefully you'll read between these passages, this is really important too. It says, do not spread false reports. You know, this is one of the big 10, isn't it? The 10 Commandments. Do not bear false witness. We should hear that today. Do not bear false witness. And this is just an expansion of that. Do not spread false reports. Do not help a guilty person by being a malicious witness. Hear this. Do not follow the crowd in doing wrong. When you give testimony in a lawsuit, do not pervert justice by siding with the crowd. And do not show favoritism to a poor person in a lawsuit. Justice is an attribute of God. And so He expects honesty and justice from His people. justice and truth is never determined by a person's wealth or lack of it. Actually, Jesus is the ultimate example of empathy. Jesus is the embodiment of wisdom. He's also the ultimate example of empathy. Let's go back to the New Testament. A great passage from the Upper Room Discourse. Jesus speaking, "If you love me, you will keep my commandments. I will ask the Father, and he will give you another helper, that he may be with you forever. That is, the Spirit of truth." Interesting. "The Spirit of truth, whom the world," there it is again, "cannot receive, because it does not see him or know him. But you know him, because he abides with you and will be in you." Here it is. "I will not leave you as orphans. I will come to you." What is in the heart of God? Jesus doesn't want his people to feel left alone. So God empathizes with us on a whole new level with the coming of Jesus. I feel like every one of these slides is a whole sermon, right? But the Bible tells us, Hebrews, that because of the coming of Christ, God is able to empathize with us as human beings on a level not possible otherwise. I think that's pretty amazing. And no one who knows Jesus Christ is ever really orphaned in the most important sense. Amen? You may feel alone. You are not alone. You may feel like you're by yourself, but you're not by yourself. If you know Jesus Christ, then what has he given you? He's given you his Spirit. And his Spirit indwells inside every believer. And that keeps us intimately close with Jesus himself. Amen? Amen. And then Jesus goes on, he says, "After a little while, the world will no longer see me, but you will see me. Because I live, you will live also." So today, the Spirit of God is with us, connecting us to Jesus and the Father. Someday, we will be with Jesus in the presence of the Father. Isn't that a great thing to look forward to? Hope. Metziko. Hope. We have that hope. So today, we're not left orphans. But we're really not left orphans, because Jesus is coming back. And when he comes back, he's going to receive us to himself. And he told, in this same chapter, he tells the disciples that I go to prepare a place for you. So right now, Jesus is preparing a place for us. So we should follow the heart of God toward the needy. Get this. Wisdom reveals that the heart of God is full of empathy and justice. And we should be drawn to those things with respect to the needy. And having met these kids and heard some of their music, I'm pretty sure that the Metziko choir is close to the heart of God. And I'll tell you what, they've already wiggled their way right to the center of my heart in a very short amount of time. So I tried to go fast, and so I'm finished, but I don't see any kids. So we're going to invite the Metziko choir to come and minister to us. And again, I truly want to encourage you to go out, and I hope that by the time we're finished, there's nothing left on their table. Buy stuff to give away. Buy more than you need. Buy more than you don't hear me tell you that, do you? Okay? Usually. Flip on your consumer gene and go for it out there, because when you do that, you're empathizing with the needy and you're helping. And then whatever you take, and I have something in my office already, whatever you take can be a reminder for you to pray for them. Also, if you look back at the table, you have an opportunity to sponsor a child. And it's cheap, right? A couple of times the Starbucks. Well, maybe a little more than that, but it's cheap. So check that out back at the table.